Good morning. This is the final bonus call for the winter 2023 OSU PDC Pro. It is June 7th, 2023, and the course ends on June 11th. Just waiting for people to arrive. Morning, Mark.
Morning. How are you?
Good. I was just checking out your website because I realized I hadn't actually got it. I usually stalk people long before. Yeah. But I was like, Lawrence Hunt. I was like, oh, that must be like business partner or something.
Yeah.
The co-founder. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everything looks great. I just haven't caught up on grading yet, but congratulations.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, that last click was a whole done something this long in a long time. So
yeah, no, it's great.
Good.
Great job. I got an email from Eitan that he would want to come, but he's not able to make it.
Okay.
So yeah.
Was there anything I was missing or anything? Like you said, you didn't get a chance to grade it, but everything in
No.
order.
Yep. I haven't had a close look at it, so I can't say for sure.
Gotcha.
But I mean, you've always been really thorough and filling things out. So
yeah, the last hour or two of that, I was like, I don't know if I missed something because my brain was frazzled. So I was just.
Oh. No, it looks, I'm just scanning through here. It looks good. I'm on my laptop, so it's a little harder to get really clear resolution, but.
Now comes the actual fun part of implementing.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I think I wonder how much of a sticker shock it is for people when they finally see, like when they work through the budget. You know, when it gets up into like the 200, 300, 1,000, $500,000, like it's a bit sobering. But
yeah, ours is going to be quite rough because we have to bring in utilities and basically everything, water. But we'll save money on the barn dough. I think that's going to be we've got quoted at like 270 for like a 30 by 90 with with it built out inside the apartment and everything. So
nice. Okay.
Oh, that will be a.
So then with the barn part of the barn dough, what do you plan to keep animals? Like, how does that work exactly?
Yeah, it's so I guess it's more of a shop. It's
oh, I see. Okay.
The barn dough because they build it the same way as like a pole barn, I think, but it'll probably be more of a shop than a barn.
Than a barn. Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah, but I'll probably put a lot of stuff in there, maybe a nursery, and I don't know if I could do a greenhouse. Like it kind of depends on how we build it out, but like some sort of seedling situation, and then maybe a tractor. I'm not sure I'll need one. Like if I could just rent one for the main, once I figure out where swales go or any earthworks, just rent it. Like it'd be awesome to have one, but I'm not sure I'll need it once everything's kind of going, or just rent one every 2 years or something for.
And or buy and resell is another option too. Like if you can get a good deal on something. How are you doing, Damien?
Hello, good morning. I'm doing good. I was expecting to see the whole class in here. I wanted to say goodbye.
Yeah, we're kind of down to a small few here.
Yeah.
Oh, I just saw yours. So I was just saying to Mark, I'm not caught up on marking for this week, but okay, so
Yeah.
you're still working your way through.
I think I finished. Probably just need to go back and review some of the slides.
Okay, let me update here. Okay, I'm seeing some yellow blocks of text.
Oh.
Oh, I see. Okay, what's happening is that there's images loading over the highlighted text. I see. Okay.
Oh, maybe if we got to raise the yellow part.
Yeah, no, there's a few spots where you didn't take the highlighting off, but what's actually happening is I'm seeing the text template with the highlighted text load underneath and then the images coming in over top.
Yeah, I was doing that before. I need to go back and fix those things.
That's fine. Okay, let it load all the way through here, but cool. Okay, well, I know I've got some back grading to do for you because there was a few that you hadn't quite finished. So.
I was late. Sorry about that.
That's fine. I'll go through them all. My goal is to get that all done today. So.
Big grade day, huh?
It's a big grade day. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you having another course coming up?
I hope so. There's another one opening up on June 26th. I have a minimum of 15 students because below that it takes up too much time away from my other consulting work to make it. I just can't justify it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and often, because and you can see now, we wind up with maybe usually 5 to 7 students at the end.
Yeah.
Sometimes more like closer to 50%. And that's pretty common across we just had our big instructor call, and it's pretty common across all of the, not just across all of the instructors for this course, but actually for online courses in general, completion rates are really low.
Yeah.
And so, by the time we get to the, even 2/3 of the way through the course, I'm often only grading somewhere between 5 and 7 students. And then the number who actually complete is quite small. So I get.
It's true for just college in general too, isn't it? Only 30% of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little harder to completely not show up for class in a college course. There's a little more social pressure, I guess, but online courses, the completion rate is typically very low. And that's why I try and send out a nudge or kind of just reach out to people halfway through at the break, because there's usually a break. So around lesson 5, I'm emailing anybody I haven't heard from at all yet, or that submitted the first couple of lessons and hasn't submitted anything else. And so I just check in with them because, as you guys know, once you start falling behind, it's so hard to catch up, right?
Yeah.
And then that doesn't give you the time at the end to do do all the really nice fiddly stuff to, you're just rushing through to get to the end. So.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about it. I was spending hours and hours trying to fill it up the maps and thinking about it, and then I was like, this is not right. I need to do something else. And yeah, I especially tend to think way too much. I've seen all my classmates finishing the assignment really quickly, and I'm like, how do they do it? It takes me a long time to think about things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
I guess everybody has different design sites too,
Yeah.
Some are probably a little less complicated than others. Like mine was hard just to think of what to do, but I didn't.
Yeah, different challenges.
Yeah, it also was really surprising because I left 19 years ago. I left Mexico, my side. And what I remember is not exactly what it is. And now things have changed. They put things around, and like, oh, what's here, what's there.
Yeah, it's hard to do that from memory for sure.
Yeah.
But I think you've done a great. You did get to go back to the site though, like over the during the course, did you not?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I use my family lives there, so I was asking for pictures and videos.
Yeah, okay. I thought you had managed to go back. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to go back.
That's
Yeah,
challenging.
I think like I mentioned that I wanted to go back at some point and pretty much try to finish, trying to do this thing, trying to create a real thing. Yeah. Hopefully it's not that hard, because in there people is like, they are like, you must till the land, otherwise we're not gonna give you water for irrigation, and that's one of the. I think that's the biggest barrier in there. Like, people wanted to till, and otherwise they see it as a laziness.
Yeah. That cultural shift for sure.
It's really those are the rules in there, so we'll see. Yeah,
we just had an interesting exchange with our next door neighbor, and they're an Indian, or I want to say Indian, they may be Pakistani, I'm not entirely sure what region they're from, but and they're in their 70s. They've been there in their house for 30-40 years, and and they're like the organic gardeners next to us. They're both like in Ayurvedic medicine, and they've got they're like they're we felt like they're a lot like us. Well, we came out of the house, what's today, Wednesday, I think it was on Saturday, and here they've torn up the entire lawn and they're putting down turf. And we're like, really, you guys? And they're like, oh, it's not plastic, it's artificial grass. And like, it's plastic, and so it came back after the job was done, like at the end of the day, like it goes in really fast, right? But it's like, they compact it and then they lay down gravel and they lay down the landscaping fabric, and then this, the plastic grass. And it just, oh, it looks really nice. And, don't you think so? And I was like, if you like green plastic carpet on your, sure, like it's, I don't know. His argument with us was like, well, we're all putting solar up because we have to conserve the energy, and now we have to, conserve water so much. He's like, it's important. And it's just so interesting because we don't have a culture of like, reusing water, like of gray water, or like they don't have any water storage on their property, right? So it's like, I mean, we don't irrigate really ever. We spot water a few plants that we're trying to get established, but we do very little irrigation over the course of the year, aside from using the rainwater tank. And then we've got a gray water system, we've got an outdoor shower, the laundry and landscape system, and it gets everything watered. I mean, we've got like this crazy, forest that's going nuts with, blooms and forage and everything right now. And it's just so funny to have that, like, well, we need to conserve water by putting this like plastic carpet down. And I'm like, yeah, but you haven't filled in all the other pieces. Like it's, it's hard to change those mindsets for sure.
Yeah, what do you think about like xeriscaping in like Palm Springs? When you go around, it's just all rocks, and maybe there's like a Palo Verde, but
yeah, it's kind of a similar thing. I mean, it's like, trying to fight desertification by turning it into a desert.
No more desert, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and especially when you really understand like, biotic influences on climate. I mean, you couldn't really make an argument that changing your half acre, or quarter acre, whatever, even 5 acre in a whole cityscape, is going to change the regional climate. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But converting it to a landscape that's going to reflect light and like, absorb more heat, like is going to be desert, doesn't make a lot of sense when you're using water on your property for showering and for flushing your toilet and for, washing laundry and everything. It's like, why aren't we prioritizing water capture and storage? Because we're losing so much right now. Like it's all just getting dumped out to the ocean because we literally have no systems of infrastructure to catch that and store it. I think we were talking about that on the last office hour call too. I feel like maybe it was a different call. I feel like we were having that discussion, but yeah, without those systems of storing it and then putting it into the landscape, like spreading it out over the course of the year, you know, we just lose it all. And then that just compounds the desertification effect. And then we're putting in, like, we're basically installing desert to prevent, yeah, it's kind of a weird shift, but.
Yeah, and we spend so much money that it's like, I'll bet a lot of those projects could be done for, you know, like 0.002% of California's budget. We just like put that towards keeping water here. I don't know. I mean, think we did pass a water bond that they haven't even spent $1 the last 10 years, because they pass it, but then it gets held up in court and people sue, and then it's that nothing ever gets done.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I almost have to do it on an individual.
Xeriscaping, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I know. Yeah, that's almost, you have to do it on an individual level, because it doesn't seem to be getting done on a macro level.
Yeah, until we have something like, you know, Australia, where it's mandated, you have to have water storage, like water capture and storage. Yeah, it's my understanding anyway. I mean, maybe that's a kind of passed down information, but that's always been my understanding, is that Australia has had such a long history of dealing with drought that you have to have some sort of water capture and storage. And I think until that's mandated, or at least like even as culturally like normal as solar has become, and there's some kind of incentive to do it, it's not going to happen. It's all going to be the 50 gallon plastic rain barrels from the city. Yeah,
you could subsidize tanks or something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, and a number of people. Oh, go ahead.
The city I live at, Ukaipa, or I'm moving to, they gave me a free 275 tote, because they're trying to recycle water, and so more places just need to do more of that kind of stuff.
Well, that's an improvement. I hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah, it's that I've wrote it in some of the assignments. It's like 1.5 miles down, they have a water recycling plant, so you can get free unlimited water. It's
I see.
Recycled sewage, I think. So it's, I'll probably have to get it tested and probably just put it on like my tree plants I'm not expecting to eat for a while.
Okay, so so then you get the water, like you don't have, they provide you the tote with the water in it. Is that how that works?
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
So they gave me 275, and then I have a couple extra ones, old soy sauce containers, and not really supposed to fill those up, but with the gray water or the recycled water, but I'm just gonna probably do that to say I can't just drive back and forth, get 200 gallons each time.
Yeah. And are they explicit about a recommendation to get it on a landscape like within 24 hours, or do they say anything about that?
Yeah, they want you to use it the same day you get it, pretty much. Like the guy said, like if you put it in a tank, throw a couple tablets of chlorine in there, it'll probably be okay, but we can't recommend that. Like the guy was just kind of leveling with me. Yeah. They have all the rules. You're supposed to do this. And then he kind of was like, but this is kind of what I do. So.
Yeah, interesting.
What do you think about so I have, my property is like, it has that old, there's like a cul-de-sac, and it was going to be like a 2-lane normal street, and then there's this little side road that I'm using, but that big 2-lane, I don't know, probably 24 feet across, and it's like they put gravel on it, so it's just hard, deserty, rocky soil, compacted. I was debating, like I watch a lot of Jeff Lawton's Greening the Desert type stuff.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like that's kind of the soil it looks like Jordan or something like that, East Palestine. So I was thinking of just doing basically trying to copy him, but it's like on a big, probably, I got to check, but like 8-degree slope, 9 degrees. That's pretty good slope. Is there like a system, of that? I don't know if that's too steep for swales, or like, I don't know if there's some sort of like land, like a hilled, terraced, something that you've seen that would
so
would make sense.
Actual, I didn't go to the original Greening the Desert site, so I'm not sure which videos you were watching, just because there's a lot of them. So I did my first PDC at the Greening the Desert 2 site. And it's actually quite, it's quite hilly. Like it's small, but there's not a lot of like just plain flat ground. I think maybe the driveway and like there's, you know, there's one little garden. Even the garden spot actually is on a bit of a slope, maybe more like, yeah, you might be, no, I don't think it would be 8%. It might be more like between 5 and 7. Like it's definitely a slope. If you put a marble on it, it would roll down and it's noticeable, right? And so it might be 8, but whatever. So that garden was built under shade cloth on swales. So, and it's, let me think. It's probably, I think if I remember, and this was 10 years ago when I did that. I want to say it's probably about like 50 by 20. It's probably 50 by, actually it was kind of a big square. It'd probably be about 50 by 50 feet or, you know, maybe bigger. So, it's sizable. It wasn't like, you know, a few little garden beds. But yeah, they had just done swales on contour across that, or like the first one, like in parallel rows. So I think the first one was on contour, and then the others above it are basically parallel to that. And because the slope isn't incredibly steep and it's so dry, you know, whatever is like slightly off contour so that the beds are parallel doesn't really make a big difference. Does that make sense? It's sort of like with keyline, like you set a certain keyline that follows the contour that you want to use, that's going to capture the most water, and then you do lines parallel to that until you reach another point where if you don't change the slope, you're going to be creating an erosion problem. So
is that erosion that I'm kind of, and do they just flood the swales, or do they just like have drips?
They had drip emitters, yeah. So they had a big tank, and I don't remember how often they were getting water deliveries, but they would get water delivered there. So then they would put in, you know, fill the tank and then water out of that on drip. So, but then the rest of the site is on, there's 2, there might be 3 terraces, and they've probably developed a lot since then because they were just building the main outbuilding. They had a shower bathroom block built just before I got there, and the main building was like blocked in, but it wasn't finished yet. But there was at least a couple of terraces that kind of like wrapped around the property, and just really simple like stone wall brick terraces. So
what were the neighbors like? Like it, because when some of the videos will show like the Garden of Eden, and like next door is like nothing, and you're like, why don't they like just?
Well, next door is,
I don't know.
Yeah, next door is Nadia's brother. I think that site's an acre, and yeah, that was our design site for the course. And it was pretty much like barren rock, and because what happens is that those properties are basically inherited through marriage, and so they'll put like a little stone, like a cinder block building on it so that it's like occupied, but then not really do anything else with it because it's, you know, it's so hard to keep stuff alive in that climate and in those under those conditions. But yeah, that site is all walled in. I don't know how much it's been developed since then, but yeah, when I was there, it was like a few trees here and there, but they weren't really interested in doing livestock at all, which makes it hard to utilize a site like that because you basically like can't turn dry sticks and like inedible forage into manure without using animals, right? Like it's hard. You know, like if you're just composting, it takes a lot more water. It takes like it's just hard to do that without putting it through an animal's digestive system. So yeah, it was pretty barren. I don't know how much they've built it up to this point, but we were planning lots of things like little boomerang swales on the steeper slopes. So swales that were maybe like only a foot or 2 wide, just to like capture water down some of the steeper areas, like around the driveway. It was quite undulating. So we did create or like design in some kind of like water catchment pockets. So there could be like almost like a little, like a pit garden. So like the reverse of a hugelkultur, but you know, like a pit garden. Yeah, and then we could capture some of the water coming that would be overland flow because there was almost no vegetation to capture anything. So a lot
And
of
the
it
pit
was just
gardens, those help with like insulation as well. And
yeah,
I
and
think I've seen a couple of those just
mhm.
on Pinterest and stuff, but I've never seen one in person.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that in one of the office hours about, in a dry climate, like building up, like, or, creating a berm that you plant into can be trickier because, I mean, it creates something that's going to dry out faster. So planting down is sometimes an easier strategy.
Yeah, like so during when it was snowing here, like the driveway I was talking about created a little like river, basically going down to the lower pond. That's kind of what fed that lower pond.
Right.
And I think it'd be awesome. I don't know if it'd be practical in terms of erosion, but like to like build up that stream and maybe wind it a little bit, and then I don't know if it'd be possible to like water it from the top, just gravity, and then put trees around it, try and just mimic like a watershed down there.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I don't know, that'd be really cool, but probably be way a whole lot of upkeep and work that would
that would be
put
that would be labor intensive. What I have seen work really well in we were in northern Kenya. I was doing field work a few years ago. And it was really interesting actually, because we were driving up to like the ridge of a mountain, like it was a low mountain, but like up to the ridge of a mountain. And on one side they had done nothing, and there'd been really, really heavy rains. And so like the road was like rutted out, the sides were just gutted, like it was a mess. And then we came down the other side, and they had put in like on contour swales coming off of the road. So basically, there's like a regular ditch going down the road that had been, built as roads get, as roads get built that way. But then these swales that came off and kind of like just redirected water, maybe every like 50 or 100 feet off into the hillside. And it was all like green and growing. The road wasn't rutted up. Like it looked so much better. And the road was in much better condition. The ditches weren't eroded out. And it was just the difference between those two was so marked. And like, I mean, they were getting the same amount of rainfall. It wasn't enough of like a leeward side sort of effect. But yeah, it was really interesting. And it was just these like little swales that kind of just forked off the main road. And even they were longer than about, 50 or 100 feet. Like they weren't huge. Like they didn't extend way out into the landscape or anything, but just enough to redirect that water. And those soils are really, really fragile. Like they blow out, and it's really like sticky clay. So I don't think there's something that you could play with there too.
Yeah, I mean, they still have those swales in the desert. I think there was a video in our course. I think Andrew went out there, like they did it during the Great Depression. They just built a bunch of random swales in Arizona or Sonora Desert or something. It's just like a forest out there, and no one's touched it for.
I would really like to go see those, because I've seen kind of, I don't want to say mixed reviews, but I guess that's what it is like about how the basin between the swales is really well vegetated, but what they don't show is how the swales themselves have really dried out. So they've had that kind of that effect of when it gets hot and dry, like those berms are basically just wicking moisture out. So the argument was basically they could have just cut down, like used like kind of more like a keyline strategy, rather than building up in order to catch water that was going across the surface. So I believe it was Roger Savory that was making that point. He doesn't, I'm not gonna say anything on record, but I think that was his point, was that there was these swales that were like, at first glance they were working because like this was all revegetated, but you could have had the same effect mostly by like cutting down or like really reducing the size of like these big berms across the landscape. So I don't know. It's there's so much. It's so site specific, and sometimes it's just like figuring out what works on a small scale. Like just really finding something that's safe to fail, test it out, make sure it's working in your soil, and for the resources that you have at hand, and then build out bigger than that. So. I sure hate to not be able to say like, oh, well, if you get this in and you do that, then it's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all observation.
Yeah, it's so much by observation, and I mean, that's what adaptive management is, right? Is finding out what works for where you are. So yeah.
Are we gonna keep access to the videos in Canvas?
You do. You have access for, they were saying 2 years, now they're saying lifetime.
Okay.
My caveat with that is that people get hung up on lifetime, and lifetime means like the length of the time that the course is up and supported. So I mean, it's through Oregon State University. Like, there's very little likelihood that this stuff is going to go away anytime soon. But you know, if you want to like save particular links, I was thinking about that. So I'm like, what would be the most efficient? And I think actually like saving links to any resources, like in your actual presentation or your project, like in the comment section, or like, there's like a little notes section underneath the slides, and drop any links that you're going to want to return to, so that those are all organized in case for whatever reason, like, they switch platforms and lose access to that course or something. But I just always say that because like I've heard so many people that like took an online course with somebody that they had lifetime access to, and then lifetime was actually like the person only ran the course for a few years, right? So I mean, I can't see that happening with this course, but I would keep in mind like where you'd want to organize information so that you could return back to it. So
and a lot of the videos you could download too, the ones that weren't on YouTube, but like the ones that are just on Canvas. I downloaded a bunch of those.
Okay. Yeah, and a lot of even the on YouTube, right? You can organize them on YouTube, or bookmark them and stuff to come back to. So I don't know how much of the material, I couldn't say off the top of my head how much of the material is only in Canvas, pardon me. Like that it's not available on YouTube if you were to lose access to Canvas. That makes sense?
Yeah. I know a lot of Andrew's stuff is on there for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So
how does that VR sandbox work? That thing is awesome.
Isn't it? Yeah. It's funny, there's actually one at the Marine Park in that place that's Santa Barbara, pardon me. We were just up there a couple of weeks ago. And it's a special type of kinetic sand. And we were trying to figure out what it was with the docents, because we would really like to build something like this. And it's made out of like feldspar, so it reflects a certain way, but it doesn't really stick together. It's got like some really interesting qualities to it. And then there's it's just like there's like a projection system, and I don't know how it. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's just it's just sensing like the elevation, but it's not. It's almost like it's specific to the sand material, because if you put your hand in, it'll sort of show the topography of your hand, but it's more like it's I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's almost like there's a limit, like a height limit to what it can, like it's almost preferentially like at a certain zone where the sand is. And if you're higher than that, then it kind of gets a little garbled. But yeah, it'd be pretty sweet to have one of those on. There would be. Yeah, that and the glass. I can't remember what they call it, but the presentation board.
Oh. Yeah, it made me think all the time, like, oh, he's in the back, or how is he's drawing?
Yeah, it's I can't remember what they call it.
Do they just reverse the image basically when he's done?
No, it's actually it's actually a glass screen that you write on. They had one at the college that I used to adjunct at. And I'm tempted to go back and get a job with them again, just so that I can like run a course and use the teaching like to figure it out. But yeah, it's like a big, like a wall-sized glass screen, and you can you stand on one side of it, and then you're right. I don't know if the screen reverses it, but and I'm not sure exactly how it works. It's the same. I'm not super techie like that, but it's all electronic, so.
It's pretty cool. But you also need to have a lot of skills to be able to draw like he does. Like he's good. Like make it seem so easy.
Yeah, Andrew's been at this for a long time. They've been running this course for over 10 years now. And he'd already been in permaculture for a while. And then he did the live Rex training with Darren Doherty in 2016, which is the same one that actually a lot of the instructors, like Javin and I and Neil Bertrando, I think Marisha Auerbach might have taken it as well, but I know Andrew, Javin, Neil, and I all took the same training. And Darren Doherty did it in 2016. And that was more like larger scale regenerative agriculture. But that's where a lot of like the scale of permanence kind of came into permaculture, because up until that point, like permaculture, is a whole design science and everything. There's all these design pieces, but there was very little of like prioritizing like what you actually want in your life and like doing like a really holistic overview of like, what do you want? What are your goals? What are your skills? And Javin kind of created a niche for himself in doing that work and like helping people that were coming out of a PDC figure out what their own skills and aptitudes were, and like what was really going to work for them, rather than just like coming out of a PDC and being like, oh, I'm going to be a sustainable landscape designer now. Like we don't need everybody coming out of a PDC going into landscape, either landscape installation or design and stuff. Some would do really well at it, but some are coming in with like other skills that would actually be a much better application for them, like it's a better suit for their lifestyle or for whatever. Like so that the way that Darren Doherty's laid it out is based on the scale of permanence. And so it really organizes the information that you get from a PDC, or like from the from his coastal agrarians training, the regenerative agriculture training, so that you start with designing your water layer, then your climate, then your geography, water, I gotta remember them all now, like access, forestry, like all of those layers, so that you don't just focus on like what you really want to do. Like if you just want to get into agroforestry, it can be really easy to overlook some of the most important parts of like, mapping, or like, water management, or the economics, or the fencing, whatever. And you'll kind of like slap together whatever, you can find or get answered in Facebook groups or whatever. Whereas when you go through it systematically, and this is why this course is designed this way, when you go through it systematically, you don't jump over pieces that you really need in order to plan the later pieces properly. So that's one of the reasons that I was really attracted to supporting in this course, and like why I've stuck with it, because I really like the detail and like the methodical, thoughtful way that they've put it together, and also incorporated parts with like Indigenous land recognition and like cultural pieces, which I think is really sort of been lost in like mainstream permaculture conversations, where it's kind of like either it's social permaculture, which does do a better job of covering it, but so much of it is just like how to garden, how to grow your own food, and like, which is, it's an important piece of permaculture. But then when you hear people saying, oh, I'm going to go build a permaculture, it's like, what? Like, what? Okay, are you gonna like put in some raised beds, or like what do you mean by that? Like, I don't understand what a permaculture is. But
yeah,
and it's ironic too, right? Because so much of it is about adaptive management, and then you're going like, well, what? Like permanent, like, But the idea is that it could be, it's a human habitat or culture that can persist, however we get there. So. Yeah.
When I was doing some research on, I think, chapter 20 or something, I was looking into Quail Springs, I think, and then I saw that maybe you were on the board there or something, or
I'm a
founder or something.
Board chair, kind of, only because I've been there so long. Yeah, so my husband and I started on the board in 2017. He left not too long after our daughter was born, so I think in 2019. So yeah, I've been on the board since 2017. I started, he took his PDC in 2012 with them. And then I took part of a PDC, their international development course or international resilience development course, which was basically a PDC for people working internationally, like especially in Africa, basically in the global South, majority world. So I took a couple of PDCs, parts of PDCs with them, and then started teaching a couple of sections in that same course, 2016. We got married up there too, so we have all these like connections. So yeah, so I'm still quite involved with them.
I saw they do like farm tour. Is there something you'd recommend? Because I'd like to check. I have never been to a permaculture place in my life still yet. So
yeah,
like a design site.
They do farm tours. Personally, we're one of the things that we have struggled with, and we're struggling with more because it's been harder and harder to attract staff because it's such a remote site. It's difficult to get to at the best of times. Now 33 is closed from the south side, so there's really only one way in, so it's quite difficult to get to. And we ran into some compliance issues with the county and natural building a couple of years ago. So the site's basically been shut down since the beginning of COVID. So we can still do farm tours on a donation basis. We still do some ceremony on a donation basis, but we can't actively bring courses to the land anymore. And one of the fallouts of that has been that there's been less and less permaculture design. So what sort of happened is that you have a bunch of buildings and you have the garden and you have the goats and the chickens and usually like 12 to 15 people living in community and coordinating all of these things, and our online programming and like hosting and all of this stuff, coordinating all these pieces and running the nonprofit. But we're struggling with like, can we still call this permaculture, because it's not really integrated the way that permaculture teaches, right? So it's definitely worth a visit because it's an amazing site, but to see a site that's really working well as a permaculture demonstration, I think you have to go into it with understanding especially some of the challenges that they've run into in the last couple of years with COVID, with the compliance issues. There's also getting onto the property, you have to drive through another property, and those people have become quite hostile to letting people onto the Quail Springs site. And partly it started off as because they were farming carrots, like big industrial mass-produced carrots. There's a whole issue with like drawing down the aquifer and everything, and so they put up signs. There's 2 locked gates to get into Quail Springs because you have to go through this property. So they put up like 10-mile-per-hour signs all over the place. So you have to basically drive a mile at 10 miles an hour to get into the Quail Springs site. And then they ran into like water issues because their well pump broke. And once you stop irrigating now in the Cuyama Valley, you can't restart irrigating without paying back like what you should have been paying for water. Like they were grandfathered into like super cheap ag water for so long. So they can't restart irrigating without paying all that back. Well, there's no way that they can make that financially viable. So now it's basically just become like a bunch of skinny cows wandering around right between the 2 gates. And they're still making you go 10 miles per hour, but they're not maintaining the roads, because as long as they don't maintain the roads, it gets harder and harder for people to get into the site.
Yes.
So it's really interesting to go out and just like see people living. Not to see like, like in a zoo, but to meet people, live in the community. And like Brenton and Jan, who have been there Brenton Kelly and Jan Smith have been there for over 15 years now. And they were really there at the beginning of it. so, you know, when they're there on the land and talking to them and understanding like some of the backstory and like the whole history of the development of that site is amazing. And there's so much amazing stuff that goes on there. And there's like, you know, Indigenous ceremony, and there's, you know, they're closely tied with like the community or Kuyama community, and they do a lot of like outreach projects and stuff. It's an incredible place to visit, to see just how people are working it out, living in a very difficult climate, in a very difficult remote location with a ton of challenges, and then a layer of like just these like legal challenges, like regulatory challenges that have been layered on top of them. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing site to go visit. I totally recommend it. But if you're looking for like to see if a permaculture site, demonstration site really functioning harmoniously and like things are like running tickety-boo, like that's not really what they can offer right now. But and the natural building, like some of the buildings that have been constructed over the years are beautiful, like some really cool, like, and you know, they're obviously hand built, like handcrafted structures, right? Like I don't think they're going to turn your wife's head, you know, but they're really, they're just these really beautiful, like, yeah, they're handcrafted, fully functional, you know, mostly functional homes. So not all of them have kitchens, and not all of them have like refrigeration, or most don't have Wi-Fi sort of thing, but like they're functional, beautiful shelters, right? So, and that was one of the main things of the main goals of like finding out, like, can we do this? Can we live as a community in the desert growing food? Anyway, I'm sorry, that's a very long-winded dump about Quail Springs. I definitely recommend it as a site. For Inland Empire kind of region, is that what you would call? Yeah, okay. Daniel.
We're like right in between Palm Springs and LA, like right smack dab in the middle, hour each way.
Riverside Permaculture, I believe. I'm just looking it up.
Yeah, Riverside, that's where I went to college. That's pretty
Daniel
close.
Aaron Francis. If you look him up, you could even send him a message. See what he would recommend as for sites to visit, because he's got a lot more knowledge about like that kind of part of California.
growriverside.com.
Yeah. Oh, no, is he just Daniel Francis now?
That's Daniel Aaron Francis Design and Consulting, but it seems like he goes by Daniel. Cool. Yeah, I'll check him out. So he does actual, like, he's the designer.
Yeah, he does really nice work. He's been he was a Quail Springs ED for a short amount of time.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, a very knowledgeable guy. So oh, interesting. Okay, there's a Daniel Francis who's a musician. He's from Ventura, lives in LA, but is not the same person. So I'm not seeing him anymore. So anyway, yeah, but he's worth reaching out to find out what other recommendations would be. Permaculture, no, not permaculture artisans, ecology artisans are closer, like San Diego. They're in Encinitas. They might have some recommendations if you feel like heading south. And if I find anything else, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Cool.
I mean, you can always come to Camarillo and see what we got going on here, but it's a smaller scale, and you know, we're coastal.
Yeah,
milder.
My sister's his mom lives there. I've been there a couple times. Yeah. Nice town.
They're like Ventura area,
or Camarillo.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay.
Yeah, he's from there.
Yeah, well, if you ever happen to be out, look us up for sure.
I will.
In terms of farm scale, yeah, I don't know what to recommend in terms of kind of what you're doing. Like, I know more kind of livestock people.
I mean, so I do want to do livestock eventually.
Yeah.
But the way we travel sometimes, it just wouldn't be conducive unless once we're up there, my neighbors are pretty cool and they have cows and goats. And so like, there might be a situation where we can say, we're gone for 2 weeks. Can you,
Sure.
and then let them graze on our land, stuff like that. So I'm sure there'll be ways to do it, and we'll start out with like chickens or something. And then,
yeah.
Okay.
You can also check with Chico State.
That's where my wife's from, and her dad teaches there.
Yeah, so I know they're they're much further north, but I know there's a Central Valley permaculture group, and I know there's some like little farms and stuff that do cool stuff.
Up around Chico?
Yeah, up around Chico, but also
Awesome.
when we were looking at moving to Merced, we connected with a few different people that had neat things happening.
Yeah, my wife is from Corning, which is 20 minutes from there or something. And yeah, we go up there probably 3 times a year. So I did not know there was a whole permaculture situation.
If there's at the university at UC Merced, Rebecca Riles' lab is the agroecology lab. She's really nice. She's really if you're interested in kind of seeing what they've got happening or what their connections are. She does more like really like soil science stuff, but I know she's got different projects going on in her lab. So she might be able to connect you with something more like kind of orchard or like farm oriented. So
cool.
Yeah. So any other questions? Oh, thanks for showing up.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a wrap-up call.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I was thinking that everybody will be here, but yeah. I'm really happy to be sharing this time with you, and it's always hard to say goodbye, but yeah, I hope this
I'm gonna do the ongoing office hour calls for anyone that's been gonna kind of open it up to anyone that's a current student or has been a student of mine, and if anyone's in the same area but didn't necessarily go through the course with me. So, and then my Voxer hours thing. So I think I'm gonna put that at $20 a month right now. So that's going to be an option.
Nice.
Can you email me that, like just what that all involves? Because I've never used Vox or anything.
Yeah.
What the consulting will involve, or maybe it's on your website or something.
Okay, I'm just working out, like, I'm trying not to go too crazy into it, but like the website that I run all my stuff through, it's got like a sales page and a thank you page, and like I'm like, I just want to put the information and like a buy here button. I'm like, come on, make it a little easier. So that's another thing I'm working on today after I'm done marketing. So yeah, I'll send that out in an email before the end of the course, because I know like Victoria was interested. There's a few other people, and some of my past cohorts, there's people that have been asking. So cool. So they have access. So
that'd be nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, like Damien said, thank you so much. It's been a great
You're
course.
Welcome.
Learned a lot.
Good. I'm glad. All right. Well, you guys have a great week, and we'll be in touch.
Okay. Bye,
Thank you.
You're welcome.